Hello, my lovely galactic listeners. You are tuning into Mind the Force, a nerdy podcast about Star Wars and mental health. I'm your host, Christine McPartlin, and I'm quite pleased to welcome you back to episode 2. Here at Mind the Force, we talk all Star Wars all the time, but with a very special twist. We have a passion for mental health, and we get into all the traumas of our beloved characters and mull over how their fiction can inform our reality. And today I'm very excited to welcome you back to our discussion on young Anakin Skywalker. And you've joined us on a very important day. We have our very first mental health condition assessment. Now, if you tuned in for episode 1, you got to hear myself and Matt, my illustrious guest co host. Was he not just fabulous? We covered Anakin's character analysis from ages 9 to 18, with the character analysis being one type of episode. Now, our other type of episode is our condition assessments, where I sit down with a licensed mental health professional, anyone from therapists to psychologists to social workers, anyone in that field who actually wants to sit down and talk with me about Star Wars, and I get their insight on our character in question. This week, I sat down with licensed mental health counselor Don Sinkfield and got his professional opinion on what traumas and conditions he sees going on in Anakin's young life. My goal is to always come correct on this show, especially as sometimes we're covering very heavy, very real issues. And let's be honest, the ramblings of two Star Wars nerds are not going to cut it for real, thoughtful conversation about the very valuable mental health lessons we can learn from these characters. And that's the point of the show. So, gotta do what you gotta do. So we bring in the professionals to lay it all out. Prepare yourselves, people. Because Don and I get into it on young Master Skywalker. Though, of course, Master is a stretch, as we know. Oh, poor little Jedi Knight. Poor little Annie. But first, a few orders of business before we get down to business. Please follow Mind the Force on all our socials. We're big fans of Instagram and Facebook. And to stay up to date on the latest episodes, please follow, subscribe, and share on all your favorite streaming platforms. Click the link in our socials bio to find all the lovely clickable links to all the lovely streaming platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Pandora, Amazon Music, all the good ones. Also, make sure to visit us at mindtheforce.com for fun extra posting content. And if you have any thoughts or questions after the show or great suggestions on future episodes, email me with thoughts and questions at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com. Second, and quite important, so please listen closely, I, Christine McPartlin, am not a mental health professional. Mind the Force podcast is intended for inspirational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. Nowhere in this podcast do I diagnose or treat listeners with any kind of psychological, mental, emotional, or physical disorder as might be diagnosed and treated by a personal psychologist or other professional advisor. The content is not intended to be a substitute for working with a therapist or licensed mental health professional. And finally, your friendly content spoiler warning. This podcast is a retrospective on Star Wars characters across all Star Wars content. All Star Wars films, TV shows, novels, comic books, and video games are up for discussion. If you don't want some aspect of currently released Star Wars content to be spoiled, I turn around now. Go on and get. And my lovelies, without further ado, it's time to get on with the show. Hello. Welcome back to Mind the Force podcast. I'm very excited to welcome a very special guest here on the show today, Mr. Don Sinkfield. Don is a licensed mental health counselor and certified anger management specialist. He was raised in Southeast Queens, New York, and came of age during the 80s and 90s. Wanting to serve the community in an era of crack and high crime, Don chose to major in criminal justice while in college. After finding that law enforcement did not suit his need to serve, he became a teacher assistant in New York public schools. This set him on a lifelong journey of helping others. After becoming a teacher, a school counselor, a school counseling chairperson, and an adjunct professor, Don finally found his calling: therapeutic work with individuals, couples, and families in his community. As a high school counselor, he presided over an interdisciplinary program that helps students create and develop performances around their content learning. And in 2006, Don was a founding member of the Urban Assembly School for the Performing Arts in Harlem, New York. In 2010, he founded Help to Adjust Counseling and Anger Management in Valley Stream, New York. And in 2018, Don partnered with Clinton Clovis to form the New Hope Mental Health Counseling Services, a private practice that serves over 800 individuals and families each week. He serves as the vice president and lead community engagement person. He is also the host of Help to Adjust podcast, where he sits down with leaders in his community who are making a positive impact. You can follow his podcast on YouTube and Instagram at Help to Adjust Counseling. Welcome, Don.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear about myself when I'm not saying it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have quite the impressive resume. I have definitely enjoyed engaging with your online content and just seeing what an amazing impact you're making in your community.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here, Christine. I mean, it's a very creative and powerful way to reach people through science fiction, especially Star Wars.
Yes, no, it's a big fandom in a big galaxy.
Right.
And I couldn't be and you couldn't be a more appropriate guest on our first episode. The New Hope Mental Health Counseling Services. I promise people I did not plan that, and we are not
Yeah.
making that up. That is the name of Don's business, and I didn't know that when when we first engaged, but it has been a delight to learn about their practice and just to engage in such a fun pun. You really can't make this stuff up.
Right. Couldn't have done better trying to make it up.
Exactly. So I'm very excited to have you on the show, and I guess I do wanna ask, 'cause I'll likely ask all of my mental health professionals that I sit down with, do you know anything about Star Wars? Have you seen any of the movies or the shows?
Unbelievably, I really have not engaged in very much Star Wars. I know that I saw a movie or two when I was a kid, but really haven't been on it since then. So I probably will end up learning more about Star Wars after doing this with you, Christine.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. I get that though. I didn't engage with the franchise until maybe 3, 4 years ago, and yeah, it was all new for me, and I mean, I fell in love with it very quickly, but it was a time commitment. It's
Hmm.
definitely it's a time commitment, it's a lot to catch up on. So, what Don and I did was I sent him several scenarios about Anakin's life, several situations which he found himself in that I thought Don, in his professional lens, can speak strongly to and reflect on how they really ring true in our own lives and really give Anakin a bit of a diagnosis.
Hmm.
Gave him a little background and we exchanged thoughts. And so we're going to hear about what Don thinks about Mr. Anakin Skywalker in his younger years. So, yes, scenario one, Anakin is able to build a service droid to help his mother with work and chores around the house. He knows how to work hard and does his best to be self sufficient, resourceful, and not burden others, especially his mother. Without a father or father figure around, he's what some in society would refer to as the man of the house. When he leaves to train with the Jedi, he promises to come back and free his mother from slavery. He's not able to return for many years and harbors a lot of guilt about not being able to return to free her. He feels it is his responsibility to save her. In the end, he returns too late to save her, and she dies. He blames himself, and that guilt will fuel his rage through his life. So what do you think, Don? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, Anakin, in this case, being a 9-year-old and, being in slavery, is really a situation where, first of all, I mean, in our society, any child is supposed to be guarded from that. It's obviously very traumatic, and at that point, a child may not be conscious of what he's really experiencing, and the normal developmental things that would happen to um, build self-esteem before, let's say, before 7 years old. You're getting a sense of self-efficacy, a sense of being okay, even by 5, wanting to do things by yourself and learning. I mean, those could be things that could be very much disturbed by what he was experiencing.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. There are those developmental years, those
Hmm.
key developmental years where, like, I remember wanting to do laundry by myself and make the Saturday pancakes, like, from age
Uh-huh.
6, 'cause I felt confident and I wanted to do it myself, and it was that love and support that my parents instilled in me, and if a child doesn't get that, then what else are they to think? They think that they have to take care of the situation. It's not, "Oh, I have to do it for myself." It's, "I have to do it for others."
Right. And so it also mentions that he's very smart and self aware. So, for a child, when there's a break in their ability to express themselves, that can often lead to, a blow to their self esteem. That child could form some kind of aggressive behaviors because they are simply not able to express. And when I say express, not necessarily outwardly express to everyone, but they're simply not able to do the things that would be natural for them at their age developing, especially for Anakin as basically a brilliant young person. He's not able to express that in the same way.
Mm. Fans of the franchise will definitely attest that, Anakin has some anger issues.
Mhm,
He
mhm.
definitely, that's a very interesting point that you bring up, because he definitely does come to express himself through violence and through rage.
Yeah.
He does his best, but clearly he didn't get a good start in life. It all stems back to our childhood, as I think a lot of people come to realize.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
Yes.
think, childhood trauma is one of the biggest, things that we constantly come back to when working with people, and, what we learn is that, people were not given attention, validation, affection, love at the appropriate levels when they were children, and You talk to them as adults, and they it really makes a difference because some people can even express that they are still looking for their parents who are. I'm thinking of someone I was treating recently. His parents are now in his 70s, and he was still looking for maybe an apology, maybe a "I'm proud of you" from his parents.
Wow.
Hmm.
Even all that time later, we still can harbor those same childlike feelings, that same searching for validation.
Yes.
Mm. Well, thank you. Thank you. I know that you do a lot of work in the community and you work with children quite a lot. That's why I thought you'd be a very appropriate choice for this first section of Anakin's life. Because this time is it's very clear looking at his experience as a child that it will go on to really inform who he is through his teenage years and certainly through his adult years. So I'm
Hmm.
very happy to get this insight.
My pleasure.
Um, do you have any additional thoughts on, I suppose, this almost self-sufficient parent role that Anakin had to take on?
Well, I will say that when I was a school counselor here in New York City, I saw children who were um, parentified, having parentification, which means that they basically are made to have this role reversal where the child is taking on the role emotionally and sometimes responsibility wise of the parent. And it can lead to a distortion of the personality at its worst. And at best, it simply disturbs the normal developmental um, childhood flow. So, on a scientific level, the hippocampus is the part of the brain that affects memory, emotion, and stress management. And so the child who should be learning about himself, herself, figuring out what they like to do and becoming good at that and having parents marvel at their progress instead are, in the cases that I saw in schools in New York, you had young teenagers, low teen years, 14 years old, 13 years old, translating for parents, doing paperwork, having to rush home to help with household chores, sometimes even getting involved in, you know, clerical tasks like making sure that bills got paid and also by the time many kids were 16 they were working all through the evening to try to make sure that their households had what they needed. So parentification is heavy stuff, and certainly Anakin would have experienced something akin to that in the world of being a Jedi.
Mm, very interesting. So, I guess just so full circle. So interesting to see these themes play out in real life. I even think about kids I knew in school whose, like you said, whose parents needed help translating things or help taking care of things around the house that really should be their responsibility. And I can imagine how that can stifle a child's development and creativity to just kind of be a kid and figure yourself out.
Right, right. I mean, the last thing I'll say about it is that it can lead to decreased trust because
Mm,
part of being a child is that you learn that you are cared for and taken care of. And I mean, as adults, that might that may seem self-centered, but as a child, that is exactly what's supposed to happen. And the first developmental stage, Erickson's psychosocial stages, which is what we all learn in Psych 101 if we took a psych college class, is the first stage is trust versus mistrust. And that
Mm,
trust versus mistrust really forms the basis for you having a healthy personality throughout your life.
mm. That is incredibly insightful. I wish I could remember Psych 101. I feel like I should have paid more attention in college. No, but I think that that definitely speaks very, very directly to Anakin's experience, and I'm sure a lot of people's experience, especially in communities of color. I
Hmm.
feel like this is a particular burden that definitely gets put on people in either underserved communities or just communities where that kind of development isn't you don't have the privilege of it always being at the forefront of people's minds.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you're ready, we can dive into scenario number 2 as we move a little further along in Anakin's very harsh story.
Sure.
So the second scenario that I posed to Don, Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn developed very quickly. He believes in Anakin, communicates with him, acknowledges his intelligence, believes he can win the pod race, etc. He's the first male figure in his life to show him validation and praise. Later, after Anakin does win the pod race, Qui-Gon arranges for him to be freed from slavery and come to train to be a Jedi, promising him his dream future. Very soon after they meet, Qui-Gon dies in battle. Anakin is still brought to the Jedi Order to be trained by Qui-Gon's apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi, but only because it was Qui-Gon's dying wish that he do so. In a way, Qui-Gon chose Anakin, while Obi-Wan felt obligated to take him on as a student.
Mhm. Yeah. That's pretty heavy stuff. I believe you said that Star Wars was seen as a kind of a science fiction soap opera because it really dealt with um, drama and heavy life issues. And certainly in this case, Qui-Gon would have become a parental figure to um, to him, and then becoming a parental figure to Anakin. Then Anakin now, he loses his parental figure, right, and then after losing his parental figure, has to adjust to life after that trauma, and so I'm thinking of um, something that in a child under 3 could definitely cause attachment disorders. And so when we were talking before about, um, the distortion of the personality later, attachment disorders can have lifelong effects on people where they can either be slow to trust, slow to warm, have social anxiety, and even serious. While they're very young, serious emotional, cognitive, and developmental problems. There's even evidence, Christine, that irritable bowel syndrome,
Mm.
unbelievably, is connected with attachment disorders. So people grow up having irritable bowel syndrome, and maybe it could be connected to their childhood trauma in that way. um, Anxiety, separation phobia, depression, self-esteem, in adolescence, problems creating friendships and bonds that are natural in adolescence. So I always go back to Erickson because I think that the Erickson's psychosocial stages are, just a really easy way to reference the normal developmental stuff that is supposed to happen. So ages 12 to 19, that particular stage is called identity versus role confusion.
Mhm.
And at that point, children are really learning what they like to do and may even be forming their first ideas about what kind of career they would like to have, what they would like to do in terms of study, further study or work. And all of that can be affected negatively by attachment issues early in life. So, he really had a hard way to go in terms of the emotional and mental health things that he could be facing.
Mm. I find it so interesting that you'd speak about how, like, irritable bowel syndrome can sometimes be a symptom of anxiety and depression and detachment issues early on in life. 'Cause it's so interesting when you see the mental start to affect the physical.
Yes.
And I guess something that I guess maybe as will be part of the message of the podcast, and I think something that I really try to live by in my own life is that people put so much emphasis on physical health, on going to the doctor, making sure you're physically fit, that you eat healthy, that you live a bodily healthy lifestyle,
Hmm.
but that it's only now starting to even scratch the surface of society understanding that the mental is just as important.
Right.
It's
Right.
just as important, and hearing something like that where there are direct studies showing that the state of your mental and emotional health can cause such a drastic physical problem like irritable bowel syndrome is very fascinating.
Yeah. It's very deeply connected. People who have had, chronic stress, it can lead to hypertension, which then can lead to heart issues. Those are the most common things that we know. But there's a lot of things that are associated with emotional and mental problems, especially when they're consistent, that I think we've yet to learn. And I think we would be well advised to just know that the mind body connection is very real.
Mm. And even some I think some medical professionals would say that we're even just only beginning to understand the connections of the brain to the rest of the body.
Correct. Yeah, I would say that.
Mm. It's very interesting, very interesting. As I know we're running short on time, if you don't have any other thoughts on this particular area of Anakin's trauma, we can move on to scenario 3.
Sure.
Okay. The third and final scenario I sent to Don. Anakin is 13 years old now, and he's been a Jedi Padawan student for about 3 years. While on a training mission with Obi-Wan, Anakin asks him if he remembers his life before he was with the Jedi. Obi-Wan says no, since he was so young when he was taken from his family. The Jedi Order would typically take children in around ages 3 to 5. Anakin sadly expressed that Obi-Wan was always a Jedi and nothing else. He stated that his life was already set out for him and that he was not anything else, unlike him who was a slave. He never shook that caste centric self awareness from his life in slavery and carries that with him, despite all his achievements and progress through his life.
Did you come up with this term caste centric? I love it because
Um,
you know,
I guess I did. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a great way to describe it, caste centric. And we live in what people would say is the greatest country in the world. And there's been a checkered history here in the United States with people being in slavery and then a system of segregation. And there's been some studies, not enough, done about the effect that just um, racism, and coming from environments where you were segregated, and how that has an effect on people after they are out of those circumstances. So, you know, one is that the idea of imposter syndrome is very common in people who, let's say, are first generation anything. So that's first generation college student. And then after college, if you, let's say, become an attorney, there's stories of people who were, Black attorneys, actually not identifying as much with their colleagues, but identifying with workers at the law firm that, were more like their family members who simply never had the chance to go to college or have a job other than being some kind of service worker, food service, cleaning a building, or whatever it is. And, so the first thing that comes to my mind is that self concept is definitely formed by what kind of what the macro system, the society says about who you are supposed to be. So if I'm supposed to be a slave, and that's what I was for much of my life, or even if not slave, just anything where there's a glass ceiling where you're not able to express um, your full self professionally, or in this case, being a Jedi or more than a Jedi. If you're not able to express your full self for much of your life, it can distort your self concept. Um, I'm sure that, he believed that he really wasn't supposed to be seen as more, although he had accomplished things that were uh, worthy of him being seen and understood as more than a Jedi. So, you know, um, it's a very relatable. I'm sure that Star Wars fans could relate if they know anything at all about American history, because the caste system is, a part of American history itself.
Thank you for that. That is definitely exactly what came to mind, is when I was writing this particular scenario, because I think we've all had imposter syndrome at some point, whether, like you said, whether it's going through college or in our professional lives. I know people that I look up to in my own life, and my own mentors and kind of life guideposts, and they've spoken to me about this. And sometimes it's hard to imagine that the people we look up to are feeling these same kind of like hesitations and these same kind of anxieties. Even I feel like it's becoming a more open topic that even people in celebrity culture, whether it's actors or musicians or athletes, people that in society, we're emulating these people and putting them up on pedestals, and even they're communicating
Mhm.
that it's like, "I don't always feel great. I don't always feel like I'm number 1 or I'm the best or that I'm deserving of these accolades." And how we can all sometimes just feel kinda small that way
Mhm.
for no other real reason other than just our own anxieties telling us to feel that way.
Right. And just something that came to mind was that the Rockefellers, the famous almost American royalty family of this country, when they would when they would turn 21, each family member would be kind of inducted into this yearly luncheon where they were basically um, told that they were part of what is a family tradition be held on to, and that these individuals were inculcated early in their life that you are a Rockefeller. This is what is expected of you. And kind of the message there was you rule the world. And so in a smaller way, we all kind of need some kind of rites of passage that says here's who you are, here's how you'll be supported, here's what you're a part of. And um, if you get that through a peer group, let's say if you're, like you mentioned, celebrity culture, if you're a celebrity and you early on are mentored by some people who give that to you, it will kind of become a part of you and give you a more secure sense of being in that culture. And I, think that those of us who, powered our way through um, undergrad or grad school or law school or to become a doctor, and you're kind of the only person of color in some rooms, it can be very daunting, and I certainly have experienced that, and also experienced a lot of encouragement that made me feel quite like I belonged in most of the rooms that I was in, but the sense of self concept that you can get, that you can lose by coming from an environment where you're not expected to be great, and you're not really supported in that way, not because people didn't love you, but because other people hadn't had the experiences that you may have made yourself a part of just by hard work or something like that. It can definitely destroy or at least decrease self concept, which, I mean, if we really wanted to go deeper, that could lead to not feeling like part of your professional circle, which could lead to depression, anxiety, a sense of not belonging, which could lead to social anxiety in your circles, etc.
I definitely understand that, and thank you for sharing that. I can definitely relate on a personal level to being the only person of color in a room and having to kind of like bolster yourself to remind yourself that I deserve to be here. I have every right to be here. I'm just as qualified as everyone else. And really having to be your own cheerleader. And if you don't have that grounding confidence and that grounding support, it can really make a huge difference.
Right. Absolutely.
I guess it also brought, I guess, to mind, since we're talking about Anakin here, another theme that comes across quite strongly in his life that I didn't really present in the scenarios that I gave to you was this idea of him actually being the culmination of this ancient prophecy where he is believed to be the chosen one, where he is basically he's meant to be this force that brings balance to the force against the dark side, and it's a whole big Star Wars thing. um,
Mhm.
but pretty much he has to put it into, I guess, clearer terms. He pretty much, since he comes into the order, he kind of lives under this pressure that, oh, we think you're the chosen one, we think you're going to bring balance to the force, and that essentially you're destined to do this big important thing. And it definitely speaks more to his feeling of imposter syndrome, and I think also adds a lot to his anxiety. I think that there's something to be said for, just when you mentioned the how the Rockefeller children would be brought in and told, you're part of this legacy and these are the resources you have. And I think there's a lot of positive behind that, because you do then have that grounding support system. You have that clear line of vision. You have really this community around you. But I think there's also something to be said for the pressures that come with that, and the expectations, and
Mm.
how sometimes those can be quite daunting.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's like, I think of maybe certain cultures where you're expected to grow up and be a doctor, or ooh, you're going to be a lawyer, or
Mhm.
you're just expected to achieve this certain level of excellence, whatever your family and culture determines to be that level of excellence. And that kind of pressure then put on the child can sometimes be detrimental.
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. No, that's absolutely true. The support is a beautiful thing, but then the pressure to do something, especially if that something is not internal to the young person, um, it can be it can be overwhelming, and it could lead to a reverse reaction where the person simply rejects that thing or that goal, or it could lead to the person working so hard towards this thing that is really not theirs internally, and then having some kind of breakdown emotionally because they are externally being pushed towards something that is very difficult. And along with it being difficult is a feeling of unfairness. Like, this is my lot in life. I have to deal with this pressure, not because I love this or I want this, but because it's expected of me. And that is a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's a lot to put on a child. I feel
Mhm.
like those start from such an early age, and I think that there's a lot you can do for a child as far as exposure. I think exposure is extremely important, just exposing them to different fields of thought and study and creativity and education. But I think we've seen in society how that can turn into a negative, when a parent may almost subconsciously be projecting onto the child. Like, "Oh, well, this was my dream, and either I may or may not have accomplished it, but you have to accomplish this too."
Ah, yes, yes, that's quite common. I knew when I was in graduate school, I knew a young lady whose father had decided that she was to be a doctor, and she definitely had a time when she was going to school, taking the pre-medical, prerequisite courses and everything, and she ended up rebelling because she hadn't that's not what she wanted to do. And in this case, sometimes it can be the reverse, where people who come from poverty, um, particularly this family came from the Caribbean, and sometimes that can be a way of assuring that being, a finding the most high status fields and saying this is what you're going to do. You have one opportunity. You're here in the United States,
Mm.
and I as a parent, or we as parents, got you here, and now go do this thing. And it's really not fair to a child to put that kind of pressure on them to experience to do something that's going to be a very heavy. It's a heavy workload, and a very just a heavy task, and the workload that comes with it, and the stress to say that this is yours to take. It's not really fair.
Yeah, I can imagine there's so many lots in life that we all take on, whether we realize it or not, whether we're born into them or we choose them. And I think especially when it comes to career, especially difficult careers, whether they're education intensive or labor intensive or just hard,
Mhm.
hard, like more like complex careers, it's important that you choose it. Like if you choose to be a doctor and you want to go through 8, 9, 10 years of medical school, like because you have a dream and you want to serve others in that way, then you do that, but you have to choose to do that. I can't
Mhm.
imagine being forced into something like that out of
Right.
obligation to someone else, because someone else isn't doing the work. You're doing the work,
That's right. Even
right?
if it's the closest person to you, or your mother or your father or whatever, it's still you are not that person. They are not you, and absolutely, they won't be doing the work. They won't be having the experiences. You will be, and so that's important.
Yeah. And and I guess just the pressure that comes with not wanting to disappoint your family and not wanting to disappoint yourself. And I mean, we could just go on all day about
Mhm.
about the layers of those kind of cultural and familial obligations that I think are very prevalent in Anakin's life. Just the pressure he puts on himself from needing to take care of his mom, and then the pressure of being the chosen one and wanting to be the best Jedi and be strong and live up to what Qui-Gon wanted and not disappoint Obi-Wan. And then he has a lot of other external factors that come in that are affecting his psyche and his priorities, and there's people in his life who are manipulating him. There's a lot of layers. I hope you
Mhm.
listen to episodes 2 and 3, Don. You'll learn more about more about
Okay,
Anakin.
for sure, for sure.
This has really been wonderful. This has just been such a delight to sit here and speak, not just about Anakin, but just about life and how
Mhm.
sometimes life can be a very complex and layered thing for all of us.
Mhm. And you can say, like, I'm speaking with the president of the New Hope.
Yes.
Uh,
Exactly, exactly. I hope you, and Dr. Clovis enjoy all those puns.
uh-huh.
No, but this has really been wonderful, Don. Thank you so much for your time today. Yes, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and may the force be with you.
May be with you. Thank you, Christine. This was great.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to thank Don for taking the time to speak with me and sharing his wonderful professional insight on Anakin. He gave us all a lot to think about. To stay up to date on Don's therapy practice and community work, please follow Help to Adjust Counseling on Instagram and YouTube. And if you're in the downstate New York area, please check out the New Hope Mental Health Counseling Clinic in Valley Stream. a wonderful community resource for therapy and mental health counseling. I'm left with a lot of big feelings today, particularly around imposter syndrome. How easy it is not to feel good enough or important enough or smart enough for something. I can think back to grad school, being so excited to learn and surrounded by my brilliant classmates. Shout out to any of my classmates who might be listening to my podcast. And damn, did I feel dumb. They just all asked these big, brilliant questions and knew so much more than I did. And I just constantly felt less than, just unworthy of my place there. And of course, in time, I found my niche, my strong suit, and I allowed myself to feel confident in that. But shaking that less than feeling, I think it only comes with time and patience for oneself and experience. A lot of things I don't think Anakin got the opportunity to develop. To see what we bring to the table next, please follow Mind the Force on Instagram and Facebook. And please like, subscribe, and shoot us 5 stars on your favorite podcast streaming platform. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Castbox, and more. Click the link in the bio. I'm a new podcast, so please, help me out, help assist out. I'd also love to hear from you. Any initial thoughts, any characters you'd love us to cover, story about your own emotional connection with Star Wars or fiction in general, shoot me an email at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com. And now, on the next episode of Mind the Force, Matt and I are back, and we'll be continuing our analysis of Anakin as we journey from Attack of the Clones, George Lucas's episode 2, through to the Clone Wars animated series season 3 arc, where our heroes meet the mysterious Mortis gods and Anakin learns of his fate for the first time. Oh, what fun we shall have. Mm, 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 mm. I'm Christine McPartlin. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, stay mindful.